Moses and Aaron gathered the Israelite leaders and told them about God's plan to free their people from slavery in Egypt. Then they went to the palace and told Pharaoh that he should let the people go. But Pharaoh said no. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. They threw down their shepherd's rod in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it turned into a cobra. Then Pharaoh called together his wise men and wizards and Egypt's religious experts, and they did the same thing using their secret knowledge. They threw down their rods, and it turned into cobra as well. But then Aaron's snake swallowed each of their snakes. However, Pharaoh remained stubborn. He wouldn't listen to them, just as the Lord had said. So God sent Moses with a message. Because Pharaoh would not let the Israelite people go, God would cause Egypt's waters to turn to blood. Aaron raised his shepherd's rod and hit the waters of the Nile River, and it turned to blood. The fish died, and the Nile began to stink, so the Egyptians could not drink its water. But Pharaoh remained stubborn and would not let the people go. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and tell him, 'This is what the Lord says, let my people go so that they can worship me. If you refuse to let them go, then I'll send a plague of frogs over your whole country. The Nile will overflow with frogs. They'll get into your palace and your bedrooms, into your bed, even your officials' houses, and among all your people. The frogs will crawl up on you and your people and all of your officials." But Pharaoh remained stubborn and would not let the people go. So God sent the frogs, then lice and insects, a deadly disease that killed the livestock, then skin sores and blisters, then hail, then locusts, and then darkness over the entire land. Each time Moses and Aaron asked Pharaoh to let God's people go, but each time Pharaoh said no. Then God gave one final warning to Pharaoh. If he would not let the people of Israel go, the oldest child of every family and animal in Egypt would die. But Pharaoh still said no. God gave the people of Israel instructions so they would be safe. First, they were to prepare a meal of lamb. They should roast it over a fire and eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Then they were to take some of the lamb's blood and place it on the 2 doorposts and on the beam over the door of the house. The blood would be a sign for God to pass over that house. Then God said, "This day will be a day of remembering for you. You will observe it as a festival to the Lord. You will observe it in every generation as a regulation for all time." Then the people bowed down and worshipped. At midnight, all the firstborn in the land of Egypt died, including the oldest child of Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron that night and said, "Get up! Get away from my people, both you and the Israelites. Go! Worship the Lord as you said. You can even take your flocks and herds as you asked. Just go, and bring a blessing on me as well." The Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the land because they thought, "We'll all be dead." So the people picked up their bread dough before the yeast had made it rise, and put it on their robes and in their shoulders. The Israelites did as Moses had told them and asked the Egyptians for their silver and gold jewelry as well as their clothing. The Lord made sure that the Egyptians were kind to the people so that they let them have whatever they asked for, and so they robbed the Egyptians. Hundreds of thousands of Israelites left that night. They took many flocks and herds with them. When Pharaoh let the people go, God didn't lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, even though that was the shorter route. God thought, if the people have to fight and face war, they will run back to Egypt. So God led the people by a roundabout way, by the sea and the Red Sea desert. The Israelites went up out of the land of Egypt. God told them to turn back and set up camp by the sea so Pharaoh would think that they were lost and confused in the desert. God knew that Pharaoh, in his stubbornness, would chase the freed Israelites. When he did, the Egyptians would see again God's power. When Egypt's king was told that the people had run away, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about the people. They said, "What have we done letting Israel go free from the slavery to us?" So he sent for his chariot and took his army with him. He took 600 elite chariots and all of Egypt's other chariots with captains on all of them. As the Pharaoh drew closer, the Israelites looked back and saw the Egyptians marching toward them. The Israelites were terrified and cried out to God, "Weren't there enough graves in Egypt that you took us away to die in the desert? "What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt like this? Didn't we tell you the same thing in Egypt? Leave us alone. Let us work for the Egyptians. It would have been better for us to work for the Egyptians than to die in the desert." But Moses said to the people, "Don't be afraid. Stand your ground and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never see you again. The Lord will fight for you. Just keep still." The Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to get moving. As for you, lift your shepherd's rod, stretch out your hand over the sea, and split it in two, so the Israelites can go into the sea on dry ground." Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord pushed the sea back by a strong east wind all night, turning the sea into dry ground. The waters were split in two, and the Israelites walked into the sea on dry ground. The waters formed a wall for them on their right hand and on their left. The Egyptians chased them and went into the sea after them, all of Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and cavalry. The Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters come back and cover the Egyptians and their chariots and cavalry." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. At daybreak, the sea returned to its normal depth. The Egyptians were driving toward it, and the Lord tossed the Egyptians into the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the cavalry, Pharaoh's entire army that had followed them into the sea. Not one of them remained. And so God rescued Israel from the Egyptians. The people were in awe. Moses and the Israelites sang a song of praise to God for freeing them from slavery. Then the prophet, Miriam, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand. All the women followed her, playing tambourines and dancing. Miriam sang the refrain back to them. "Sing to the Lord for an overflowing victory. Horse and rider he threw into the sea."